For this Saturday's history video, I'd like to talk about L.B.J's legacy. Now, in the previous history video, we talked about Vietnam, which was the negative part of his legacy. This ridiculous, insane war that killed 58,000 Americans and destroyed hundreds of thousands of American families and led to the alienation of the American people from their government because of his policy of lying to the American people. But the other half of Johnson's legacy is an extraordinary record of unbelievable accomplishment, of very important things that he did. It's so funny, when I try to rank presidents in order of greatness, Johnson always starts off at second tier, right below the best ones, below Lincoln and Washington and Roosevelt. And then I think about Vietnam, and all of a sudden he drops 8 places. And it's kind of a debate in my own mind, and I'm sure many people feel that way. When Johnson came into office right after Kennedy's death, the Civil Rights Bill prohibiting discrimination in public accommodations had been filed by Kennedy and was going absolutely no place. The Southerners who controlled the Congress weren't letting it out of committee in the House, and were going to filibuster it to death in the Senate. And in one of the most extraordinary examples of creative presidential leadership, which is documented in Robert Caro's book, the last book called Passage to Power, what Johnson did was incredible in breaking that logjam and getting that program passed. He also, by the way, passed the Kennedy tax cut. When Johnson took office, the top bracket was 90%, and he cut it down to 60%. Eventually it fell to 50%, and then Reagan brought it back to sanity by bringing it down to 28%, gone back up now to 39%. But crucial achievements. And then after he was reelected and brought with him a gigantic Democratic majority, he basically ended racial discrimination in America by passing the Voting Rights Act. And the Voting Rights Act basically said that in the southern states where blacks were uniformly disenfranchised, only whites could vote. The 15th Amendment giving blacks the vote was theoretical. The black vote would be something like 1% of the state in Mississippi or Georgia, with blacks being 35 or 45% of the population. And what Johnson did basically was to take the process of registering voters away from the states and federalizing it. And the result was massive increases in black registration, black voting, total change in Southern politics, and really the end of political racism in the United States. That was only part of what this guy did. Do you realize when Johnson took office, there was no Medicare program? There was no Medicaid program? If you're old and you got sick, hey, you were on your own. Lots of luck. There was a program called Kerr-Mills, which you had to pass all kinds of a means test, and essentially it was a welfare program for the elderly. And there was nothing available for anyone under the age of 65, and damn little for people over it. He set up Medicare and Medicaid. Those two programs now comprise about 20% of the federal budget, and they're by far the leading cutting edge of government help that it gives people. And his other policies were incredible. School lunches, school breakfasts, the women and infant feeding program. The anti-poverty program per se really didn't work. He tried to set up empowerment zones and community action centers, and that deteriorated into democratic political clubs with patronage. But in terms of the fundamental structure of the United States, we were a totally different country before the Civil Rights Bills passed and before Medicare and Medicaid passed. And that transition we owe to President Lyndon Johnson. Thanks for watching.